I don't want someone like you representing this company. Pack your things. You're fired." The words exploded across the open plan office like a grenade. Everyone froze. Some mouths dropped. Phones hung midair. Coffee cups trembled in the grip of stunned fingers. At the center of it all stood Jamal Carter, tall, composed, and calm, even as the storm swirled around him. He blinked once, slowly. "Excuse me," Douglas Kent, CEO of Brightwell Technologies, leaned forward, face red with disdain. "You heard me. You're done here. I've had enough of your attitude." "My attitude," Jamal echoed, not as a question, but as a quiet reckoning. Always questioning things, always poking around where you don't belong. Always thinking you're smarter than everyone else. Douglas's voice rose with each accusation. "You're not a fit here, Jamal. And let's be real, we both know why." Gasps rippled through the office like a wave crashing into disbelief. Jamal didn't flinch. "Say it, Douglas. Go ahead. Finish the sentence." Douglas scoffed. "You're just a diversity hire who got lucky." But that luck just ran out. In the corner, HR manager Elaine Palmer stood frozen, her face pale. "Douglas, we should stay out of this." "Elaine," Douglas barked. Jamal turned to face the office, catching the stunned expressions of colleagues who had once nodded politely but never spoken much beyond work emails. He looked at them, one by one, then back at Douglas. "I've worked here for 8 years. Built our cybersecurity division from the ground up. Handled 3 merger transitions. Tripled the department's performance rating. You stood on stage last quarter and said, and I quote, 'Jamal Carter is the backbone of this company.' What changed?" "Douglas." Douglas leaned back, smug. "It was PR. Don't flatter yourself." "Get out of my office." Jamal's jaw tightened, but his voice never rose. "You've made a mistake. A serious one." Douglas waved him off like a fly. "You're lucky I don't call security." Without a word, Jamal picked up his coat, straightened his tie, and walked to the elevator. Every step was measured. Eyes followed him. The doors closed behind him. 3 floors up, in a sleek glass room overlooking the city, 6 board members sat in quiet shock. They had watched it all unfold on the internal security feed. Board chairwoman Margaret Whitmore took off her glasses slowly. "Did he just—" "Yes," muttered Leo Takeda, the CTO. "He fired Jamal." "Because he's black?" asked Ayesha Ben Murad, legal counsel, her voice trembling. "Because he couldn't stand Jamal being better than him," said Leo. "And because he's a bigot who's finally let it slip." Margaret stood. "Call an emergency board session. Now." Downstairs, Jamal stepped into the rain, his reflection warping in the glass doors. He didn't raise his umbrella. He didn't need to, because some storms weren't meant to be dodged. That night, Douglas sipped scotch in his penthouse, gloating to his golf buddy over speakerphone. "I finally got rid of that smug bastard. Thought he was untouchable." His buddy chuckled. "About damn time. That guy made everyone else look bad." Douglas smirked. "Exactly. Can't have the help thinking they run the place." He laughed. Loud, confident, drunk on power. But at that very moment, Jamal sat in a different kind of room, the boardroom, dressed in the same navy blue suit, hands folded, eyes level with every director around the table. "Let me be clear." Jamal said, calm and controlled. "I didn't come here to plead for my job back. I came here to make a statement and to tell the truth." He told them everything, every subtle slight, every project credit stolen by Douglas, every time he was told to tone it down or stay in his lane. He showed emails, HR complaints that were buried, performance records that contradicted Douglas's claims. He ended with a simple line: "You can keep him, or you can keep your integrity. You won't have both." Aisha leaned in. "And if we offered you his seat?" Jamal didn't hesitate. "I'd lead with integrity, with results, with vision. Something this company hasn't seen in years." The board voted, unanimous. At 8:00 a.m. the next morning, the announcement shook the tech world, effective immediately. Brightwell Technologies has named Jamal Carter as its new chief executive officer. Douglas stormed into the lobby that morning, waving his ID badge that no longer worked. What the hell is going on? Security met him at the door. Mr. Kent, you've been relieved of your duties. He stared, confused. By who? The elevator chimed. Jamal stepped out. I believe that would be me, he said, meeting Douglas's eyes for the last time. Douglas stuttered. You can't. Jamal walked past him. I just did. As he entered the executive floor, staff erupted in applause. People he never thought noticed him stood, clapping, eyes shining. Elaine smiled through tears. It's about time. In his new office, formerly Douglas's, Jamal sat in the chair, not with triumph, but purpose. And when a young intern knocked, nervous, he looked up and said warmly, "Come in. This door's open to everyone." He led the company to its highest earnings in 5 years. But more importantly, he led with respect, and he never fired anyone for looking different. He hired them for thinking different. Jamal sat in silence for a moment after the intern left. The room still carried the stale scent of Douglas's expensive cologne, like a reminder of everything he had endured to get here. He stood up, walked to the window, and looked down at the city, not with arrogance, but with a quiet fire in his chest. He had a message to deliver, not just to the company, but to the world. The media exploded. Headlines roared across every major outlet. CEO fired for racism, replaced by the black employee he insulted from fired to first. Jamal Carter's unbelievable turnaround. Justice served in a suit and tie. Brightwell's stock surged. Investors were impressed not only by the swift action of the board, but by Jamal's composed leadership in his first official address as CEO. Standing at the podium, his voice echoed across the press room. I wasn't fired because of poor performance, he began. I was fired because I made someone uncomfortable. Not because I raised my voice, but because I raised the bar. The reporters were riveted. Jamal continued, his gaze steady. For years, I showed up early, worked late, and built departments brick by brick. And still, I was seen as less than, not for my qualifications, not for my contributions, but because of the color of my skin. Today, I don't stand here to celebrate revenge. I stand to represent change. He paused. I lead this company not to erase the past, but to write a better future for everyone. The room erupted in applause. Meanwhile, Douglas Kent sulked at a bar in uptown Manhattan. He had called in favors, tried to file a wrongful termination suit, but the board had compiled receipts, witness testimonies, and a legal team ready to bury any false claims. He was untouchable no more. Back at Brightwell, Jamal began reorganizing the company. He didn't come in swinging, firing people out of spite. Instead, he invited teams to speak freely, created mentorship programs, promoted based on merit and initiative. He held open Fridays, where any employee, from janitors to junior developers, could speak directly with him. One afternoon, Tasha Moore, a black woman from accounting, stepped into his office, eyes misty. Mr. Carter, she said quietly, I just wanted to say, you being here, it means everything. For all of us who never thought we'd see someone like us in that chair. Jamal smiled. Call me Jamal. And thank you, Tasha. You belong here just as much as I do. 3 months passed, then 6. By the end of the year, Brightwell was voted one of the top 10 companies to work for in North America. Employee satisfaction doubled. Turnover plummeted. Productivity soared. But the most notable shift, the culture. People started seeing each other, listening, collaborating like never before. Even the most jaded old-timers began to admit the company felt alive again. One day, a former employee named Kevin, who had quit under Douglas's reign due to constant microaggressions, returned for an interview. I never thought I'd come back here, Kevin said during the interview, chuckling nervously. But I heard Jamal Carter runs the place now. That changed everything. Jamal personally welcomed him back. Later that week, he held a town hall meeting. The auditorium buzzed with energy. He stood at the front with no mic, just his voice. I want every one of you to know, if you have ever felt unseen, unheard, or underestimated, your time has come. This isn't just about me. This is about all of us, about a culture where talent speaks louder than skin. In the back row, Elaine from HR stood silently, tears on her cheeks. She had seen too much, buried too many complaints. But now, something was finally changing. After the event, a young Asian software engineer named Min approached Jamal. Sir, I got an idea. It's a little crazy, but Jamal grinned. Good, let's hear it. Min blinked. You mean now? Yes, right now. Innovation doesn't punch a time card. They sat and brainstormed on the spot. Jamal had transformed the company into something living, breathing, not just profitable, but purposeful. Meanwhile, Douglas Kent struggled to find employment. Word had spread. His arrogance, his prejudice, all documented. No company wanted the PR disaster. Eventually, he gave a bitter interview to a fringe podcast. They replaced me with a political move. Douglas sneered. He's not a real leader. But even the host hesitated. He doubled their profits. Sir, he's respected across the industry. Douglas stammered. It's all just optics. Optics. The world knew better. Back at Brightwell, Jamal stood before the latest class of interns, most of them from backgrounds underrepresented in tech. He told them his story, about the day he was fired, about the sting of humiliation, about not lowering his voice or shrinking himself to fit into someone else's box. One intern raised a hand. Weren't you angry? Jamal nodded. Of course I was. But I learned something powerful. When you've got talent and integrity, the best revenge is success. They applauded. He continued, never let someone else's limited view define your future. I didn't climb up here to pull the ladder behind me. I'm building a staircase. And all of you, you're next. And they believed him because Jamal Carter wasn't just a CEO. He was a symbol of resilience, of justice, of rising. And the world finally was watching. That evening, after another long day filled with decisions, pitches, and performance reviews, Jamal walked into his office and closed the door gently behind him. The skyline was painted with orange and lavender hues. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to exhale, truly exhale. He sat down, not at his desk, but on the couch by the window. His fingers traced the edge of the company pin he had once worn at every conference, now resting on the table in front of him. So much had changed, yet so much had finally aligned with what he had always believed was possible. A company that didn't just chase profits, but did so with dignity. There was a knock. His assistant, Renee, peeked in. Sorry to interrupt, Jamal, but there's someone here who says he really wants to see you. Jamal raised an eyebrow. Who? Guy named Richard Langley. Says he's from the governor's office. Curious. Jamal stood. Send him in. A tall white man in a dark gray suit entered, holding a leather folder and carrying an air of official business. He extended his hand with a respectful nod. Mr. Carter, I'm Richard Langley, Chief of Policy Development under Governor Rosenthal. It's an honor. Please, Jamal said, shaking his hand firmly. Just Jamal. Langley smiled. I'll get right to it. What you did here, not just surviving what happened, but leading the way you have, has caught statewide attention. The governor would like you to serve on the State Technology Advisory Council. It's a position that helps shape policy for equity in innovation and tech infrastructure. Jamal blinked. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Langley grinned. We could use your voice. I'll have to think about it, Jamal replied thoughtfully. But thank you, truly. As Langley left, Jamal stood alone again, the weight of impact settling deeper. His reach was extending beyond Brightwell now, but he wasn't chasing power, it was chasing him, because he had proven that leadership doesn't come from the title, it comes from the soul A few weeks later, Jamal returned to his old neighborhood. The streets where he grew up still held the same cracked sidewalks and faded murals. But to him, they were sacred, the places where his fire had started. He visited Miss Eliza's community center, the place where, as a child, he first used a computer. Miss Eliza, now in her 70s, stood behind the reception desk, shocked as he walked in. "Jamal Carter," she shouted, arms outstretched. "Look at you." He hugged her tightly. "Had to come see the place that made me. You're making us proud. Boy, the kids here talk about you like you're some kind of legend." He laughed. "I'm just getting started." He made a quiet donation, enough to fund new computers, scholarship programs, and summer tech camps for the next 5 years. But more than that, he promised to return, to teach, to mentor, because real success to him meant opening doors that stayed open for others. Back at Brightwell, change kept rolling. Tasha from accounting was now director of diversity programs. Kevin from development headed up innovation labs. Elaine from HR ran the new ethics division. Jamal believed in hiring from within, in cultivating greatness. One morning, he received a letter from Douglas, written in jagged pen strokes on corporate letterhead that still bore his name scratched out. "Jamal, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know, I see it now. I was wrong. About you. About everything. I lost everything. But you gained a world I never understood. Leadership. You embody it." Douglas Kent. Jamal sat still after reading it. He didn't feel triumph. He felt closure. Later, at the next all-hands meeting, he stood before hundreds of employees. He held the letter in his hand. "This," he said, holding it up, "is not a letter of defeat. It's a reminder." He looked around the room at new faces, old faces, hopeful eyes. "We all make mistakes. We all fall short. But we are not defined by the worst thing we've done. We're defined by how we choose to move forward. This company moves forward with compassion, with truth, and with power earned, not taken." They rose to their feet. Every single one of them. Jamal had not just changed the company. He had redefined what power looked like. No longer loud, no longer cruel, but firm, purposeful, kind. Years later, Jamal would stand on a different stage, this time at a commencement ceremony for a major university, accepting an honorary doctorate. He looked out at the sea of graduates, gowns flowing, families beaming. "I was once fired," he began, "for being who I was. Not for failing, but for daring to shine too brightly." Laughter bubbled from the crowd. He smiled. "But let me tell you something I learned the hard way. Your light doesn't have to make others feel small. The right people, the ones who matter, will see your glow and reflect it." He held up his degree. This isn't a reward for being perfect. It's a symbol that you can rise, even from ashes, and build again, stronger, better, bolder. Jamal Carter, once seen as an expendable employee, had become more than a CEO, more than a symbol. He had become a movement. And the world had changed, because one man refused to shrink in the face of hate. He stood tall, he stood proud, and because of that, so did everyone else who came after him. After the ceremony, as the graduates tossed their caps into the air and proud parents wiped tears from their eyes, Jamal stepped down from the podium and was immediately surrounded by faculty, reporters, and eager students wanting photos and handshakes. But among them, one young man stood still, clutching a leather-bound notebook to his chest, his eyes locked with Jamal's. There was something in his gaze, not awe, not admiration, but something deeper, recognition. Jamal walked over. "Hey," he said gently, "what's your name?" "Tyrese. Tyrese Langston." Jamal extended his hand. Tyrese shook it, but didn't let go right away. "I read about what happened to you. I watched that press conference 10 times, he said, his voice cracking slightly. "I'm the first in my family to graduate, and I got here because I saw you do what nobody thought possible." Jamal nodded slowly. "You did the work, Tyrese. I just cleared some of the brush on the trail, but you showed me it could be done." Tyrese insisted. That I didn't have to pretend to be smaller, that I could wear my hair like this, he pointed to his long dreadlocks, and still walk into any room like I belonged there. Jamal placed a hand on his shoulder. You do belong. And when it's your turn, you make sure the door stays open behind you too. Tyrese nodded, eyes glistening. I will. I promise. They took a photo together, one that would be shared thousands of times on social media that week. Captioned simply, from one trailblazer to the next. Months passed, but Jamal's story didn't fade. In fact, it only grew louder, brighter. He was invited to speak at global tech summits, equity forums, and corporate leadership panels. His TED Talk, titled Fired by Hate, Hired by Justice, hit over 20 million views within the first month. In it, he said, when you're black in a system that wasn't designed for you, success feels like breaking through a wall with your bare hands. Every scratch is a story, every scar is a lesson, but if you keep swinging, eventually you stop breaking walls and start building bridges. That quote was engraved outside Brightwell's new Diversity Innovation Center, a building Jamal himself broke ground on, alongside dozens of employees who had once been overlooked and undervalued. Inside the center, a plaque read, in honor of every voice once silenced, and every hand that reached back to lift another. Jamal Carter, CEO. One day, as Jamal walked through the center's hallway, he passed an office where a team of interns were collaborating on a pitch deck. He heard laughter, ideas bouncing, no fear, no masks. He paused, leaned in the doorway. YALL mind if I sit in? The room erupted. Mr. Carter, you want to join our brainstorm? He chuckled. Call me Jamal. And yes, I've got 15 minutes before my next meeting. Let's hear what you've got. They welcomed him in like a teammate, not a boss. And that was exactly how he liked it, because Jamal hadn't fought to sit on a throne. He fought to build a table long enough for everyone. Still, challenges never ceased. In the second year of his leadership, Brightwell faced a data breach attempt, the largest in the company's history. Panic flooded the IT departments, but Jamal, ever the cybersecurity architect at heart, personally jumped in. At 2:43 a.m., he was in the server room with his sleeves rolled up, helping identify the breach pathway, while others watched in awe. No one expects a CEO in the server room, one engineer whispered. But that's why he's different, said another. They shut the breach down within hours. And at dawn, Jamal stood before the exhausted team with bagels, coffee, and one simple line. You didn't just save the company. You saved our people's trust. Thank you. The gesture and the presence meant more than any bonus. A year later, Brightwell was named Fortune's Company of the Year. But when the camera crews arrived, Jamal didn't hog the spotlight. He brought his executive team, junior staffers, even custodial leads into the shot. Every single person here makes this company what it is, he said on camera. Every role matters, from cleaning the floors to closing billion-dollar deals. People believed him because he lived it. Meanwhile, Douglas Kent had moved out of the city, living a quieter life. He followed Jamal's journey from a distance, part bitterness, part awe. One day, he attended a leadership workshop where Jamal was the keynote. He didn't reveal himself. He sat in the back, blending into the shadows, but as Jamal finished, his eyes scanned the room, and for a brief second, they met Douglas's. Jamal didn't flinch. He simply nodded once, and Douglas, he nodded back. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was peace. Years later, Jamal wrote a book, Built from Fire, How I Rose, and How You Will Too. It became a bestseller. In the dedication, he wrote, to anyone who's ever been told they were too loud, too smart, too ambitious, too black, may you never dim your light. May you shine until the world adjusts its eyes. Jamal's journey had begun with a humiliation meant to crush him. Instead, it became the fuel for a legacy. He didn't just survive injustice, he turned it into an empire of equity. And by the time he stepped down from Brightwell, 10 years later, the company wasn't just respected, It was legendary, not because of its profits, but because it had once been led by a man who turned hatred into history and changed the world simply by refusing to step aside. 10 years after he first stepped into the CEO's office, after transforming not only Brightwell Technologies, but the very landscape of corporate leadership, Jamal Carter stood once more in front of the company, not in a suit, not with a title, but in a simple black sweater, worn jeans, and eyes that had seen the weight of both injustice and victory. It was his farewell day. The atrium was packed, hundreds of employees, from interns to senior executives, even retired staff who had returned just to witness this moment. Portraits of his tenure hung on the walls. Jamal with world leaders. Jamal visiting rural schools with donated laptops. Jamal cutting the ribbon of Brightwell's first STEM academy for underprivileged youth. But now, all eyes were on him. He stepped up to the mic. The room fell silent. "I've always believed leadership isn't about being the smartest in the room," he began. "It's about being the one who listens, the one who remembers people's names, the one who makes sure the janitor feels just as important as the board chair." He glanced across the crowd. 10 years ago, I was fired, humiliated, told I didn't belong. A ripple of emotion moved through the room. And today, I walk away knowing not only did I belong, I helped reshape what belonging means. His voice caught slightly. "I didn't do it alone. You stood with me, you built this. You made this company not just successful, but just human, real." He paused. His next words soft, reverent. "My mother passed 2 weeks ago." Gasps rippled. "She didn't get to see this day," he continued, voice trembling but firm. "But before she went, she held my hand and said, 'Baby, don't ever forget the world tried to bury you, but you were a seed.'" Tears welled in many eyes, his own too. He smiled. "So if I leave you with anything, let it be this. When the world pushes you down, don't fight to rise alone. Rise together. Build a longer table. And when you have power, don't hoard it, share it." He stepped back, and the room stood. Thunderous applause, standing ovation, a wave of respect, love, and gratitude that washed over him. Later that night, Jamal sat alone on the rooftop of his brownstone, looking out over the city lights. A warm breeze moved through the trees. A soft jazz record played behind him. He wasn't famous in the way celebrities were, but he had changed lives, quietly, permanently. His phone buzzed. A message from Tyrese, now running his own startup. "You cleared the path, Mr. C. Now we're running." Jamal smiled, and as the stars shimmered above him, he whispered to the night, "I was never supposed to make it here, but I did, and I left the door open."